And here's the thing, with Kent County Council saying they can no longer cope with child migrants, are we now officially in a crisis? Because it's quite strange, isn't it, how modern discourse works. Some of it depends on where you sit politically. A lot of it depends on whether you digest your news through the conduit of social media and all the kind of hyperbole that goes with it. But there are some sort of irredeemables on this story, and I keep hearing lots of people describing the Channel migrant crisis, Channel migrant story as not being a crisis. They claim the number of people trying to make the crossing by boat isn't significant in the grander scale. It's just actually a small percentage. Rewind a couple of years, they say, the same amount of people would be trying to get to the UK, only via different methods, through the tunnel, the back of trucks, that kind of thing. And this is their evidence that the Channel crossings is not a crisis. I have no idea what planet some people are on. This is a crisis by any measure. Whichever way you look at this story, it is a crisis. From a humanitarian perspective, it is a crisis for those trying to get across. Small children or pregnant women attempting to cross the world's biggest waterway in a rubber dinghy is a flipping crisis. At what point could you not see that? But there is, of course, a greater crisis here as well. Since when, and this again comes back to well, you can't say that, can you? Since when did this become wrong or controversial to criticise illegal immigration? Since when did it become controversial or wrong to criticise or highlight economic migration as distinct from genuine refugees? Why do some people have such a problem with that? 0344 499 1000. 5,000 people, just let this settle for a second, 5,000 people across the Channel in boats this year alone, and we're not even midway through August. Last year, over 2,000. The numbers are growing, and these are just the numbers we know of. So in nearly 2 years, by the way, since the end of 2018, about 155 migrants who crossed the English Channel were returned to mainland Europe. So the figures we've got thus far in the last 2 years take us to nearly 8,000. We could go, of course, back from that. 5,000 people. 5,000. That's like 10% of the population of West Devon. This year alone. 5,000 people is a lot of people, by the way. Since when did anyone describe the figure 5,000 as being insignificant? When did 5,000 become a small number? 0344 499 1000. When we're talking about economic migrants, and I believe that's mostly what we're dealing with here, it also costs a lot of money to get to the UK via the method of coming on a boat. At some point in the journey they made, from whichever country of origin, they paid somebody thousands of pounds to get there. A destitute refugee, generally speaking, would not have access to those kind of funds. They wouldn't be thinking in that kind of way. And of course they would be going for the first place of safety. Of course you would. Of course you would. And of course it also costs a lot of money when somebody arrives on this side of the system. I'm thinking the initial accommodation, healthcare, schooling, housing, all that goes with it. Why am I made to feel guilty, by the way, for pointing that out? Surely left-wing McDougall, the boy Jones, Comedy Carol, the whole gamut could acknowledge that within the story there is such a thing as economic migration. Now, I don't know about Comedy Carol and the boy Jones, but I've been over to Calais. I've spoken to these people. I've interviewed them on many occasions. And whilst I've also spoken to people who've escaped tyrannical regimes, I can absolutely tell you, first-hand qualified fact, that many of these people are coming here because they want a better life. I was reading one story just last weekend of a fella from Iran that wanted to come to the UK because he didn't get on with his in-laws. His reasoning was that he didn't get on with his in-laws. Why is it wrong to point that out? Today, a council says it cannot safely care for any more child migrants amid a rise in the number arriving alone in Kent. Kent County Council says it does not have the capacity for additional unaccompanied asylum-seeker children. The costs, of course, are vast. Now, Roger Goff, who's the head of Kent County Council, a man I've interviewed on dozens of occasions, has pointed out many times that the seismic cost, this is just child refugees, okay? Now, they were given extra money a few months back now, maybe 8 months ago, from the Home Office to cope with what was already a growing crisis then, and the crisis continues. The local authority, Kent County Council, and other councils as well, and Kent have long argued that other councils aren't taking their fair share in this story, but Kent County Council have a responsibility, and you may fall off your chair to know this, to look after a child migrant until they reach the age of 25. I'm not kidding you, 25. So if you come here as a 10-year-old, the local authority in Kent have a duty of care to you for the next 15 years at least. 0344 499 1000. Now, it may well be, by the way, just to separate these stories, that we are talking there about the genuine vulnerable people that we'd all quite like to help. I get that, okay. Who knows? What have these people got in common? Ken Clark, Michael Howard, Jack Straw, David Blunkett, Charles Clark, John Reed, Jackie Smith, Alan Johnson, Theresa May, Amber Rudd, Sajid Javid, hands up at the back, and a giveaway Priti Patel. Yes, all Home Secretaries, and none of them have solved this problem. None of them have. Taking in refugees is noble and correct. Taking on economic migrants is an affront at every level, from the cost to the taxpayer, the pressure on the system, huge issues around cultural assimilation, and you could even argue not fair on the migrants themselves. 0344 499 1000. Can we now, with a straight face, just all put our brains into first gear and intellectually conclude that this is a crisis? The manner in which somebody comes in, the very public way of gaining entry into a country via a boat in this way, and the country seeming impotent to address it, takes this into a whole different level of what the world watches on. We have a very visual example of a failing immigration system. If somebody is hot-footing it into the back of a truck or legging it through the Channel Tunnel and they're not seen, then there's not a lot anyone can do about it. This isn't under the light of a silvery moon. This is in broad daylight. No one's hiding it. We're on our way. We want a better life in the UK. And I'll say it just in case the meerkats are listening. I don't blame any of those people for wanting to come here. But wanting to and being entitled to are two completely different things. So actually, Kent County Council today say, within some of the people on those boat trips, children are often thrown into those boats as well. And there have been, over the course of this year, a few hundred kids in that equation. And that has tipped Kent County Council into dangerous territory where they can no longer afford to look after those children. If you didn't think this was a crisis before, surely just that new piece of information is enough for you to realise that this is a crisis. 0344 499 1000. When a council tell us they haven't got the money to deal with, bearing in mind, I don't know where, 5,000 people, by the way. Just think about this aspect. Those 5,000 have made it to the UK this year. Most will never go back to their country of origin. Where do those people go? What happens in the end? Do they merely drift into the grey economy? Do they eventually get settled status while applications are pending? What happens there? This isn't about someone's religion or colour of their skin. I don't even buy into that thing of, who knows where their affiliations are. They could be members of ISIS. I've got no idea about that kind of stuff. I'm just talking about the basic mechanics, the nuts and bolts, the practicality or the impracticalities of saying to 5,000 people who are coming for economic purposes, do you know what? In you come. That can't work at every level. And it costs a gazillion quid in order for this process to continue. And so far, have you heard from Priti Patel this week? I've heard nothing from Priti Patel this week. We'll speak to Sir Gerald Howarth later, former minister, who says he had a conversation with her earlier today. We'll find out what his take is on this. 0344 499 1000. Like all of these subjects, I want to explore the other side of it, because if there's something that I've got wrong in this, this is what it's all about. This is what talk radio is all about. Then educate me, for goodness sake. Tell me I'm missing some spectacular point. But whichever way I slice this, whichever way I look at it, firstly, yes, it's a crisis, demonstrably a crisis. 5,000 people is a crisis. this year alone. We're 4 months from the end of the year, by the way. So that's a crisis. The figure is big. The entire project is expensive. It's also dangerous. I cannot see a positive that comes out of this, and I'm just bewildered by the resistance of some to use the word crisis. 0344 499 1000. If you look at, just take the Kent story today, because they're very much at the coalface. If you live in Dover or Folkestone, right on the south coast there, you'll be familiar with all sorts of issues surrounding this. This gets right into a local conversation. It brings a whole new definition to that phrase. But of course it then gets beyond just that one territory. But when you look at what's happening with Kent County Council, their announcement today about how they've got no resources now to cope with this. Can we not all, once and for all, conclude this is officially a crisis? The Channel migrant story is a crisis. 03